I took a walk to Poland. Hi, Twitch chatters. How are you doing today? We are going to be talking about the new cards from the set Phyrexia All Will Be One and their implications for Pioneer and Modern. It's kinda rough to make set reviews for Modern nowadays in this post Modern Horizons 2 era, as the standard cards kinda suck and they just rarely are exciting. So most of the stuff you get for Modern is fringe, role players, hate cards. But there is a few cards that are important to touch on, so I guess we can talk about those. For Pioneer, there is a lot more room for archetypes to grow and change with the new cards, given that the arguably best deck in Pioneer, Rakdos midrange, is actually a standard deck, but just with Thoughtseize a fatal push. For the most part. Shoulder was okay or no? Question mark. Very good question. But I'm not sure what do you mean exactly. Shouldered Mushroom I Dismay turns out to be playable in Pioneer, although whenever I play it myself, my experience does not align with the experience of the masses. And my card trades for cheaper removal spells and it sucks. Capricious Hellraiser with DDT enables cast non-creature spells for free. True, but you are casting a... It's a 5 mana and you're not even guaranteed to hit the thing you're making, right? Because Capricious Hellraiser costs 3 red. But you have to have 9 cards in your graveyard. Dig Through Time costs 2 blue and delve 6. So you're left with 3 cards in your graveyard plus Dig Through Time. So you are 1/3 not to even hit the card you want. Let's say you somehow put an Omniscience into your graveyard, or I don't know, Alrund's Epiphany. Something powerful, right? Imagine Ultimatum, whatever. Then you have 4 cards in your graveyard, and I guess you have a quarter of the time you're not gonna hit it. Because you choose 3 cards at random, you choose 1, not 2. You're gonna get a Dig Through Time out of your dragon, but there is a few problems. Namely, it does actually cost plenty of mana. But we'll talk about Capricious Dragon when we get to the Capricious Dragon. Maybe there is some results we could start. I could warm up my voice by looking at. Modern Challenge from yesterday. Quickly post that. Crushing Footfalls. Generic Ragavan. Rakdos midrange. Do I do voice exercises? I never done one. No, I never did one. Generic Ragavan is Breach, yeah. I think they should make virtual cards cost more money so no one can afford it and so no one has to play this terrible game. That is very benevolent of you. Raktas, Footfall Summer, Jagmovurg. Alright, it's a nice modern challenge, literally the same 5 decks. In the top 8 and like some combination of amounts. Oh, Focal Tameshi combo in 13th place. Technically interesting, but actually you've seen it before. With the more kind of sideboard, nice. I guess it's a Eladrami Skull deck, so you have a Morka in your deck to fetch it up a little bit. Prevent your opponent from interacting. Hydroid Krasis. Alright, opponent. Savior 0-1-1-7 goes pretty hard with their tutor targets. You lost to this deck. Was Hydroid Krasis crucial? Elementals. Let's look at elementals. I think Flamekin Harbinger is so bad. It's just inting. Unfortunately. I guess it was okay with Riva times, but... But it's just so bad for the most part. Like, playing it with Risen Reef was fine when they didn't kill your Risen Reef, because... You did stuff, but... Can fetch the Orvarfolk against creativity of Harbinger. Bros, you don't need to read the card to me. I know what Flamekin Harbinger does. But you know what else it does? It searches for the card and puts it on top of your deck. And it is a card that you spend a card on a 1/1. And you improve the quality of your other draws. But if you're lucky, you would have drawn the card anyway, so you just played a 1/1. So you're just making yourself less likely to get lucky. Because you're binding yourself to always spend 1 mana on a 1/1. Tutors are bad, yep. It is not the act of tutoring that's bad, it's the act of tutoring on top that's pretty bad. When the best card you can tutor is Risen Reef or Omnath. No, with Flamekin Harbinger you're not your own luck, because you are consigning yourself to a timeline where you spend a card on a 1/1 for red mana. Vampiric Tutor is bad, yeah. It's pretty bad in grindy matchups, and this is all this deck plays. It can't play differently. You also have to be aware that you're talking to a person that has played many Flamekin Harbingers during the summer after Modern Horizons 2 has released. It's not that I don't know how the card operates. I actually know that very intimately, which is why fucking Birds of Paradise. Imagine you sit down to play your card game and your opponent puts this on the table. It's just Birds of Paradise. I am tired. My intention was to highlight why I like it, not to insinuate that you didn't know. Alright. That is fair. Of course, it is sometimes hard to communicate via the medium of text in a Twitch chat, so I shouldn't hold it against my dear Twitch chatters, but I'm kind of allergic to when you ask a person why they like a card and they read the card out for you. And you know, why do you like lightning bolt? Oh, it deals 3 damage. Yeah. But it's pretty hard sometimes to communicate other concepts, so if anything, the existence of so much variety makes modern fun. Modern is pretty fun, yeah. There's many decks. Like a relatively high amount. If you play every day or every week, you will eventually feel like you're playing as the same decks over and over, but that's just true for any Magic the Gathering ever, so it is to be expected. I'm going to grab a cup of tea and then we can begin the set review. But I just need to polish my glasses real hard. Okay. Good polishing. Do I see anything without glasses? Yes. I mean, you do see stuff without glasses because it's just more blurry. I'm so stoked for Pioneer this weekend. I'm bringing Grain White Boggles to release day RCQ Pioneer. Imagine being stoked to play Boggles. Although, it is true that the new cards help with that. Alright, Twitch chatters. So, we're going to be talking about Phyrexia. All will be one cards today. This set review is going to be mainly concerned with how the cards appear for Modern and Pioneer. Pioneer is currently my greatest focus. as the upcoming PT Philadelphia is happening in just a few weeks from now, 3 weeks. So I am paying most attention to that format. And also by the nature of the Modern Horizons set, it is just the case that standard level sets are going to impact Pioneer much more than Modern. Still, there is a few interesting cards for Modern, so we're gonna touch on that when they appear. First, let's go over quickly. Let's quickly go over the very important reprint for Pioneer. Blackleaf Cliffs, Copperline Gorge, Reservoir Thicket, Seacrom Coast, Darksea Shores, Fastlands, Allied Colored Fastlands finally in Pioneer. Finally, the mana bases of Allied Colored strategies are not cringe and they actually are going to be functioning. Some of them are better than the others, but in general, what color combinations are playable depends on the cards. Is your mic okay? I hear you somehow differently today. Well, let's see. Hello, hello. Test. No, I'm just speaking more. Yeah, I'm just speaking louder than usual. So, Fastlands, very nice. The green ones are really good for Lanor Elves, Elvish Mystic decks. Now, Gruul can have a non-cringe mana base. And Razorverse Thicket might be an option. Maybe for Angels, not necessarily for that deck, as you might not be interested in lands that come tapped when you're trying to cast your Kaila's Reconstructions. But there is some potential Aura decks that people were working on that can now function with Razorverse Thicket as a way to cast Glade Cover Scout on turn 1, which previously not really all that possible. Co jest kurwa, czemu nie pasuje? Dobra, pasuje. And Seacrom Coast may be useful somewhere for spirits. Of course, Mausoleum Wanderer. Great card to cast with Seacrom Coast in some scenarios. Darksea Shores lets you cast Thoughtseize and consider at the same time maybe some other cards that are cheap in both colors. And Blackleaf Cliffs. Of course, there is at least 2 playable Arachnus decks, so you're definitely not going to be unhappy including that in your deck. Although there is an important thing to mention about Fastlands, namely, it is that playing many Fastlands in your deck is actually not free because of the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms cycle of dual lands, manlands rather. Then of the Bugbear and the rest of the cycle all have the same requirement, and it does clash a little bit with Fastlands. I don't think you can just relentlessly put them over and over into your deck. I don't think you can necessarily play like 4 Fastlands, 2 Den, 2 Hive in a Rakdos deck, which currently the Rakdos decks play about 3-4 Fastlands typically. So it might be that for the decks that are interested more in the manlands, you are going to be looking to play a reduced amount of the Fastlands. That being said, I guess I've played Phoenix for a long time and I didn't button I just played 6 total Fastlands plus 2 holes and it's been okay. So overall, Fastlands obviously great. Not much more to say about them. Does this make Slowlands super cringe? No, Slowlands actually are pretty okay. In fact, having both in your deck can be pretty okay for having a painless curve out sometimes if you draw them correctly. It's pretty bad to have 4 Haunted Ridges in your deck, which the Rakdos decks currently do, because you very often play it on turn 1 or 2 as a tapped land, and it's pretty painful. But if your deck is interested in casting 4 plus mana cards, you probably still play a pair. In general, we could look at like a Phoenix deck list and we could inspect their mana base, which is actually what the allied colored mana base are going to be able to do now, right? If we look at this Phoenix deck list, the way they build their mana base, of course Phoenix is a little bit different because you play fewer lands, more cantrips, but here you go, like 6 copies of fast lands total, and then a pair of, okay, 1 Stormcarved Coast in this deck list, but sometimes you see a pair. So I would believe that something similar would be, a similar model would be okay for Rakdos. You have more lands in Rakdos, you have more space to do stuff. Is the mana for G Devotion Splash White good enough now? I think it's as good as it was before this set, because Razorwedge Thicket does not excite me as a way to splash in a Devotion deck, which frequently is going to try to top deck a land that will let it cast Storm the Festival or some other expensive card. On the other hand, there was a Black Splash Devotion deck, which did use the fast lands. I didn't love them there. So I'm not sure about that. And then let's go and talk about actual cards in the set. First comes Elesh Norn, 5 mana 4/7 Vigilance, Panharmonicon for you, no ETBs for your opponent. First thing worth bringing is that this card is actually pretty resistant to many forms of removal, which it might not appear on the first look, at the first pass through when you're reading the card, but the combination of having 7 toughness on top of the ETB stopping effect means that there is some, removal that it dodges. It's pretty hard to kill with damage-based removal. You cannot exile it with, let's say, a Leyline binding. At the same time, black removal does exist. So take that with a grain of salt. For Modern, the biggest upside would be exactly what I mentioned, the way it doesn't really die to stuff. At the same time, it's a 5 mana, no immediate effect card, so I can't really imagine playing this. Well, it does have some immediate effect in that it, for example, stops Sigarda's Aid from equipping hammers, etc. But I think for Modern, it's very unlikely to be of any relevance. For Pioneer, I think the card looks much better. One of the obvious homes is the enigmatic Incarnation deck, which is always looking for some one-off creatures to tutor. And I think Elesh Norn looks pretty impressive here. It doubles on your ETBs from all of your crappy enchantments that you're going to have in spades. And also, it stops many effects in Pioneer. Cavalier of Thorns no longer grabs a land. Leyline Binding no longer exiles anything. The entire Angel deck, right? It's all ATBs in that deck. So, Righteous Valkyrie no longer triggers. I guess the triggers are just life gain, so I'm not sure if that actually matters, but it probably matters a little bit. Fable becomes only medium. It does not stop Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I think that's needs to be clarified. Fable does not have an ETB effect. Sagas have. I'm not sure what is the name of those abilities, but they have some abilities that are numbered, and it is not triggered by Fable entering. So Fable actually works normally with Elesh, and it does not make two shamans when it is one you control. So it already enters with the first counter. It is not an ability. It enters with a counter, but it does not trigger an ability, right? Elesh non-stops triggered abilities from triggering. And putting the counter is not a triggered ability. It's just how it enters the battlefield with as a saga. So there is some minor uses for this in Pioneer. I don't think it's all that super and all that exciting. It might throw a wrench into some people's plans, and if your deck is a enigmatic incarnation deck, then you can benefit from the ETB. Notably, even copying the effects of your Leyline Binding, just exiling two effects, 2 permanents with every Leyline Binding you cast afterwards. I think Elesh Norn is a 2 out of 5 Wool canisters and might see some fringe play in Pioneer. I expect not to see her in Modern. It is an interesting card with like some potential to do some stuff, but it's by no way broken, and I don't even think it's very strong. Do you expect to see her in your dreams? We'll see. Next comes Kemba. Ka Enduring. 1 white. Cat Cleric legendary creature. When ETBs or another cat ETBs attach 1 target equipment to that creature you control. Equipped creatures you control get +1/+1. 5 mana, make a 2/2 cat, 2/2. So it is a 2 mana, let's say, a variant of Core Outfitter. The difference between Kemba and Core Outfitter is that Kemba is, again, going to be Pioneer legal. So it is another way for Pioneer Colossus Hammer decks to equip the namesake card. Now, I have tried Pioneer Hammer decks a little bit a few weeks ago out of curiosity, and they were really, really bad. Therefore, I wouldn't be really all that excited about Kemba alone. It's a little bit of a slow enabler. Kemba only equips to itself, so while some decks are going to be really scared of turn 1 hammer, turn 2 equip the hammer and have a 13/13 creature on the battlefield, right? Some decks are just gonna die to that. Some are going to be less impressed, mainly the ones with black removal, for example, the popular red-black mid-range Fatal Push deck, right? So it alone does not change things all that much, but there is a few more hammer cards in the set, which, when combined, they give me some hope that the archetype could be interesting. Not entirely convinced that it's gonna be getting there, but as we get to those cards, we're gonna talk about it. Kemba notably also triggers on every other card entering the battlefield. There's not too many cards in Magic that are very good that I have searched. When I searched through Scryfall, I have not found too many cards that were overly impressive, although one of the interesting cases is Lion Sash, which is both an equipment and a card, so it might fit into a Kemba deck really nicely because it kind of works on both sides and can be tutored by equipment tutors. Is there any way to make it a Kahira deck? Probably not, but that's pretty funny. Rabbit Battery is unfortunately a rabbit and not a cat, which I guess is pretty self-explanatory, but that is indeed the case. Rabbit Battery is a rabbit. But as extra redundancy for the hammer deck, I think Kemba might be pretty solid in that role, and I acknowledge fully that most likely the deck will fall flat on its face and be kinda shitty, but I'll give Kemba 3 out of 5 because I'm a little bit excited about it. Next card. Mondrak, Glory Dominus, which is a 4 mana, 4/4 legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror. Which is basically a anointed procession, but it's also a 4/4 for the same mana cost. Wait, not the same mana cost as you need to pay double white, but that's probably pretty minor. And on top of that, we also get to threaten our opponents with the 1 Phyrexian, sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, put an indestructible counter on Mondrak Glory Dominus. So we can have an indestructible 4/4. Now, I think this card is more cool looking than it is good, but lately lots of every other card seems to create a treasure token or a blood token or any other type of a token, so those things can actually add up, and maybe even in some situations you can go off. I probably can't go off, but if you multiply your treasures, you could go places and spend mana on more stuff, right? So my intuition is that being a 4 mana 4/4 that you play and expect to stay on the battlefield, that's not a good Pioneer card, and it's not gonna see play. On the other hand, people do play Sholdred the Apocalypse, so I've been proven wrong before when it came to that. The exact types of decks where you would want to use it are pretty unclear to me, so I'll give it a 2 out of 5 wool canisters. Can I make predictions for what grade will you give? I can't. Same as Zelesh. It is not clear to me that Elesh is better than that card, so it does seem fair to me. Next comes Ossification. 1 white, enchantment aura, enchant a basic land you control. When it ETBs, exile target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls until it dies. It's a pretty nice removal. I think it compares favorably to something like, for example, Declaration in Stone for the most part. It is basically a Journey to Nowhere, yeah. With a requirement being that you have to be playing basic lands in your deck in spades. So if your deck is going to be naturally fulfilling this criteria, then I think ossification seems like a valid option. So many dynamos in the chat brings up a nice synergy too. SRAM, open the armory. Not SRAM. SRAM Senior Advisor draws a card with ossification for what it's worth. I'm not sure if you're gonna be having basic lands and SRAM in your deck at the same time, but if that ever happens, then potentially. Pairs with Lay Down Arms. True. True. It does kinda work similar to Lay Down Arms. Lay Down Arms also incentivize you to have plenty of basics, planes, namely. There's differences. Ossifications will always hit anything. Hits planeswalkers too. Your opponent doesn't gain life, so. Here getting ossified means getting very drunk. What is here? Seems good for blue-white control. Already plays a lot of basics for lay down the arms. That's actually true. Yeah, I could see this being played in blue-white control. In some small amount. You can do that. If you have enough basics. It's probably a bit sketchy because lay down arms ask you to have planes. Like ossification wants specifically basic, which means that it might not be actually reliable on turn 2. While lay down arms also sees irrigated farmland, hallowed fountain, prairie streams. It's in any ways it seems like a decent sideboard removal for mono white or for other decks that can satisfy the requirement. So I'll give it a 3 out of 5 for being an okay sideboard removal. Better than White Shouldred, yeah. Next comes Skrelv, Defector, Might. White mana. Legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might. White mana, 1/1. Toxic 1, can't block. Phyrexian tap, choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1, Hexproof from that color, and it can be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So what Skrelv is essentially a giver of runes. The difference is being, well, manifold, but the important difference is being that it's an artifact and the fact that it is legal in Pioneer. Toxic 1, probably pretty irrelevant in most of the spaces that this card will be concerned with. But it's one of the Oxtra cards that make me interested in Pioneer Hammer. It is a 1-drop creature that can give unblockable or protect your other creatures while they're trying to hit your opponent with Hammer in play. So I think I will be trying a Hammer deck with Skrelv and Kemba, which we discussed earlier. Actually on Kemba. So for Modern, it compares poorly to Giver of Runes, which is a medium card to begin with. Fracom Jane Sheriff, thank you very much for the sub, very based. So I think the most important thing for Skrelv is its legality in Pioneer. Twitch chat also just enjoys mentioning that the card is a legendary, which means it does let your Mox Opal tap for colored mana. Well, that's fine, all fine and dandy. I am not sure if that's of great relevance, as Mox Amber is just like every single. Did I say Opal? I might say Amber. Every single set release, there is some new shitty legendaries. And every single set release. Oh, does this work with Mox Amber? Does this work with Mox Amber? Can we finally have a Mox Amber deck? And then we can't. It's probably actually a downside to be a legendary creature. Because, well, you can play multiples, kind of awkward. So kind of awkward to play 4 of them. Although it is also, let's say, kind of a lightning rod for your opponent's removal, so it's actually pretty okay. Besides the potential hammer decks that would really appreciate protection and unblockability that Skrelv can provide, there is also all the other Pioneer decks that are interested maybe in 1-drops that they didn't have access to otherwise. Namely Angels or some other random white creature decks that might enjoy 1-drops that would protect their hate bears. Annoyingly, Skrell can give hexproof from a color, so you cannot protect from Boseiju and Otawara, which means it is not very effective at protecting your hate bears from interaction if your opponent is playing Lotus Field. You have like a Raiden to protect, etc. It's not that great. Protects a certain rat. You could use it to protect Greasefang. Not sure how well it all is gonna play together in practice, but I think there's many places where you could try Skrelv. It's not gonna be great in all of those places because not being able to block means that it's kind of, not being able to block, costing life. There's plenty of small downsides on this card, but I'll give it a 4 out of 5 Woke Canisters because I do expect to see it in Pioneer competitive decks at least for a while, and that's because I'm also hoping that the Hammer deck is gonna be good. Next card that comes, Blue Sun's Twilight. A straight up upgrade to Entrancing Melody, which is a card that showed up in Constructed before. It's not a card that you see in Constructed often. The upside of being a supercharged version when at 5 mana, when at 7 mana is okay. It's not groundbreaking or anything. But I could imagine using this card if I wanted to put, for example, a big spell in my pieces of the puzzles Phoenix deck. And then I have the option of stealing, for example, as you say, Fable tokens for 2 mana, while in the late game I can cast it for 7 mana and, for example, I'll take control of Shouldered and copy it, and then Legend Rule the copy, which is not even good. But I think there is potentially some fringe uses for it. Take and copy a Cavalier from Mono G. Yeah, you could technically do that. I'm not sure if it's gonna play that way often. It probably will not, but the option is there. Next we see Mercurial Spell Dancer. One white, one blue. Phyrexia Rouge, 2/1, can't be blocked. When you cast a non-creature, put an oil on the Spell Dancer. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove 2 oils. If you do, your next instant or sorcery spell this turn gets copied. So, what do we see here is we've got a 2 mana, 2/1 unblockable, which is a decent stat line for attacking, and it's not a great stat line for blocking. You might block with some 1-drops from aggro decks on the defense, but it's mostly about attacking. You also need to enable it after you play this card. So it starts with no oil counters whatsoever. You need to remove 2 oil counters as it deals combat damage. So there is a little bit of a long list of ifs with regards to this card. You need to play it, then it needs to survive, then it needs to deal damage. Which I guess if it survives, it is gonna deal damage as it is unblockable. But it needs to deal damage, and then it needs to have 2 oil counters, and then you need a spell to copy. So it is pretty rough that you need to literally cast 2 opts on turn 2, on turn 3 to do stuff with it. In Modern, you could use Mishra's Bauble, but also it is not justifiable to play a card that costs 2 mana, dies 2 and 6, and it's just in general not super exciting. It's also always gonna need enabling, yeah. After you play it, if you just top deck it, you do need to enable it with something. It's gonna kickstart you. It is not gonna kickstart you into anything. You need to kickstart it with some other effects. So you just always need to be helping this card. The payoff potentially can be big if you get to copy big spells. But I imagine this type of a threat alongside cantrips more so than big spells. So the deck, you know, in theory, you could use it to copy, I don't know, Cruel Ultimatum, right? So you could go big with the copy. That said, when you need to have your deck be full of cantrips, then it's kind of hard to include Cruel Ultimatum in your deck. It feels like. Copying Expressive Iteration seems pretty great, yeah. Okay, let's think about it. What is good to copy in Pioneer with this card? I think a good card to copy in Pioneer with this would be Treasure Cruise. That's a card that's both cheap and expensive. Or you could copy Temporal Trespass, even better, of course. So I think that would be your goal, ideally. You would like to copy the Delve spells with Mercurial Spell Dancer. So yeah, there is lots of things that this card asks off of you, which makes me very skeptical of whether it's gonna actually show up. In fact, I'm not really all that skeptical. I just kind of know that it's not gonna show up because it does ask you for that. The card comes with plenty of weaknesses between low toughness and just having to work hard to enable every single one that you are gonna top deck. Exploded Singularity would be great to copy. Is that deal 10? Damn, that's a good copy. I'll take a quick break, chat. I'll come back and we'll rate this card in 2 minutes. Alright, bros. Is it a 1 or a 2? I think it looks kinda cool. It's gonna play terribly, but not terribly enough to be like absolutely unplayable. But it's gonna be like not in any deck after a certain point. What about copying Collected Company? It's relatively cheap but powerful. I wish you good luck. Putting 2 oil counters on your Mercurial Spelldancer in your 30 creature Collected Company deck. Can't give same as Elesh. Alright, I'm going to give 2 to Mercurial Spelldancer. But I'm going to go back to Elesh Norn and I'm going to readjust her rating. To give her 3 WoW canisters. Because I think Elesh Norn is definitely much better and much more likely to see play than that card. With that, we can move to the next blue card on the list. Minor misstep. Blue mana instant. Counter target spell with mana value 1 or less. Simple effect. The discourse card. Well put. First, I have a thing to say about how counter magic works in general. Namely, counter magic is much worse than removal as a form of interaction when it comes to timing that you are able to exercise on your card. You need to have the card available when your opponent is playing their card, and that is much harder when the cards you're trying to target are 1 mana cards, right? So I think looking at this card and comparing it mentally to Spell Snare is pretty shallow thinking, because there is actually little that is similar about those cards. In general, in Modern, and also in Magic in general, the 1 mana cards are the ones that you're able to deal with by using other means of interaction. So Ragavan, you can just Lightning Bolt a Ragavan. Also, thank you very much for the sub. Yes, cool. Well, I can't Lightning Bolt a Living End or a Thoughtseize. Well, here comes my second point. There's one scenario for which Minor Misstep is greatly favorable, and that is the Cascade cards. Violent Outburst costs 3 mana, but it does cascade into a card that costs 1 mana, 0 mana. So naturally you can counter that, and then you're trading upper mana. So what I think Minor Misstep's place in Modern is that of a Cascade hate card. With some flexibility that is tiny bit different than Spell Pierce. On a deck-to-deck basis, you will have to ask yourself a question. Do I want to be playing a Minor Misstep over a Spell Pierce? I think very often the answer is going to be no. I don't want to. I want to play a Spell Pierce because it interacts... wow. It interacts better with Ren and 6. It interacts better with other non-creature spells. It interacts better with Expressive Iteration, etc. So you say it's a better invasive surgery. I would not... Well, it's not a better invasive surgery if you're really after the extraction effect, which I think most surgery decks aren't. It's an option to play either of those cards. Basically, I think the closest comparison actually is not gonna be Spell Pierce, but Flusterstorm, which was correctly brought in the chat. If we view Minor Misstep solely through the lens of being a Cascade hate card, that is a card that is able to counter... Kurwa, te zwierzęta, no co mi tak łazicie teraz? No przeszkadzacie mi, nie mogę myśli zebrać w ogóle. Półka. Alright. So, to reiterate, I think the most realistic, most efficient way to look at minor misstep is to look at it as a Flusterstorm equivalent with different upsides than Flusterstorm. Flusterstorm, I think, typically was a better cascade hate card when facing off specifically against Living End. It falls off a little bit against Rhinos, and it's overall not very flexible. There's not many matchups you want to board the Flusterstorm. In my experience, you frequently can, but it feels really poor and not effective at its job. Minor Misstep is going to have some slim extra coverage against decks like Hammer, while also being, I believe, slightly better against Rhinos, where it's gonna be more common that they have the mana to pay for the Flusterstorm. As what commonly happens with the Rhinos deck is they suspend Crushing Footfalls on the turn one of the game, and then it just comes off suspend on turn 5. You can't counter that with Flusterstorm. It's a scenario that pops up pretty frequently in my experience. With Minor Misstep, you can fight that still, so it works a little bit better against Rhinos in general. I don't think the card is great, and I don't think it's gonna be main deckable. I think it's gonna be a sideboard option with the like main focus on Cascade, and then you tune the slight differences, the second, you tune your sideboard in a way so that you have enough cards for any given matchups with your secondary uses of a card. For example, you could board Minor Misstep versus Hammer, and while not absolutely excellent, it's gonna be, I think, a playable card. For Pioneer, it does seem not very relevant. Some coverage against Titan 2 or the silent side of the Pacts. Well, you could use it against Titan to counter the Pacts. It's pretty shit at that. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. I will be really surprised if we'll see this card in the main decks in a few months from now. I think we're gonna see it in sideboards every now and then. Misstep counters Ragavan, Spell Pierce doesn't. That is true. But also only half the time when you're on the play. Sometimes you're gonna be on the draw. And in general, you're still going to be needing to devote the same amount of cards to deal with Ragavan anyways. You will still need to have the proper amount of removal that deals with Ragavan anyway. So Minor Misstep does not actually allow you to change your deck in a meaningful manner. Going to the next card. We're done with blue cards and we move on to black ones. First one is gonna be Joldred's Edict. 2 black, instant, choose one. Each opponent sacrifices a token, a non-token, or a planeswalker. So you choose exactly which type of a card they sacrifice. Which means that as far as Edict side grades go, this one is pretty okay. I guess we do get a Edict side grade roughly every 2 sets or something now. When was the last one? Maybe Sudden Edict? So that was a while ago. Which was split second, so you can't counter that, but in general, Edict effects are pretty weak and they're pretty narrow. They're only useful in very specific situations where you need them. Shoulder's Edicts has a very specific use in Legacy because of the Married Lage token. Let's use Married Lage Slumber as a stand-in, for example, because that's a way to put a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. Some decks in Legacy do that. And Shoulder's Edict counters the 2020 if that's what you are after. Even having some natural protection from edicts in the form of other creatures in play does not function as well. You can't do that. Besides that, not a very relevant card. It is nice that it can sacrifice Planeswalkers, so you could, for example, if you have it in your deck, in your main deck, in Pioneer, in Rakdos midrange, even when facing off against mono green, you could use it to kill off Kioras or something, even if your opponent has a board of creatures that you would rather them not sacrifice. One other scenario where I could find this card useful is Blue-White Control versus Rakdos midrange matchup. I played that yesterday. From the Rakdos side, I got absolutely ranched by Dream Trawler. And this is probably currently one of the best edicts that you could play in your sideboards. If you would not like to be raunched by Dream Trawler, I think Shoulder's Edict looks actually pretty great against Blue-White Control and Pioneer. Forcing them to sacrifice the Planeswalker will get rid of Teferi at 2 mana instant speed, and if you're dead to Dream Trawler, even Shark Typhoon tokens and similar will not save the Dream Trawler from, or the Samurai tokens from Wandering Emperor. They will not save the Dream Trawler from getting sacrificed. So I think it's okay in that role, but pretty narrow. I give it 2 out of 5. It also kills like Sylvan Caryatid, but that seems medium important. Beats Tarask from Trickery bullshit combo. Yeah, that's pretty important. Next card, which I put alongside the black cards because it seemed more appropriate to me. Draws School Bomb. Black artifact, 1 sack draw, 3 sack return creature from the graveyard to your hand, draw a card. Only as a sorcery. Pretty solid effect in that it is an Urza's Saga target that is capable of producing value. Now, it is probably very fringe if that's ever relevant. I was making a big deal with last set when Mishra's research desk got revealed, because that was a card that was able to give you card advantage from your Saga trigger. It did not materialize as much, maybe. I keep playing the desk in my Jeskai Station grinding station breach deck, and I'm not unhappy with it, but everybody else has cut it, so maybe that says something about the card. And unfortunately for Draw School Bomb, and fortunately for probably everybody else, Lurus of the Dream Den is not a card that we can play anymore, but Draw School Bomb looks actually pretty nice with Lurus of the Dream Den, if that was a thing that we would be still capable of doing. It seems like a pretty strong grindy tool that would let your opponent, well, never let your opponent break through it without some exiling effects. As is, you've got to be pretty dedicated to put this card into your modern deck. And I think in Pioneer you also have no reason, because the like only use I can think of is being the Saga target. I was thinking GDS might play a copy of this card. Like just play Rodok, play it. In the sub, or what do you mean? Sounds crazy. I think it's cute, but actually, in reality, I think we have to give it 1 out of 5 because it's not gonna be good. So maybe it was a stretch to introduce it alongside cars that are potentially strong, but we might see someone put it into their saga deck at some point. Ever. Next we see Annihilating Glare. For black mana, destroy target creature or planeswalker, and you have to sacrifice an artifact or a creature to enable it. So a Sigrate to Eternal Life, right? That's the name. Yes. Feels like we've got a slightly better Bone Splinters variant every set. Annihilating Glare's upside right now is that it is able to sacrifice artifacts. And artifact is one of the most expendable types to sacrifice. So it's always worth looking into, in my opinion. Because food tokens, treasure tokens. I could imagine playing Annihilating Glare in Rakdos Sacrifice in Pioneer. Granted, in reality, the main reason you actually end up playing Eternal Life is, I think, the exiling effect, matching up well against Old Growth Troll, Cavalier of Thorns, and some other cards. Although there is a bit of tension because Rakdos Sacrifice indeed is a deck with Witch's Oven and Deadly Dispute, so it has spare artifacts, and Annihilating Glare can be a trivial matter to sacrifice an artifact. So, yeah, it's just a side grade to an existing effect. It's interesting, but I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 because in reality it's probably not gonna be played much. Next, Anoint with Affliction, 1 black. Instant exile target creature with mana value 3 or less and has Corrupted. Exile instead if control has 3 or more poison counters. This is the first Corrupted card to show up in the review. Which is to speak that I think Corrupted is mostly a flavor text on constructed cards, and the toxic mechanic in general is a little bit weird, and it does not translate very well into constructed, right? The way that toxic works, it just always feels like you're gonna kill your opponent fast with damage before you actually poison them, so you're just trying to poison them to enable your corrupted cards, but most of them are limited cards and not really constructed cards. Now, why do we bring Anoint with Affliction? It's because it's a clean answer at instant speed to Old Growth Troll. Minor, but I think relevant. Unlikely to see major play. Possibly we'll see no play whatsoever, but if you want to kill Troll at instant speed, now you can. Nice versus Greasefang, maybe? Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5, which is the baseline rate for every card, but that's how it is. Hello, anyone here know why people play so slow on Modo? I usually all my opponents finish the game with less than 5 minutes on the clock while still have 18 in standard, I mean. probably... Ała, kurwa. Win traders. Which is a problem in the standard leagues. They're not partly playable. Are they on Cancer's list of slow players? Probably not. What are win traders? If you have enough mod accounts and you have 6 mod accounts and you pair 6 account, if you pair 5 accounts with 5 losing accounts with 1 winning account, each losing account enters a league, and you pair into your winning account 5 times, then you have entered 10 leagues and you have 5 out 5 leagues, which means you profit. So that's why people do that. So basically they are just parasites ruining my fun. Yes. Yeah, you go 505 times and you go 055 times. Given the price splits, you do make a profit. So if you do that an entire day, you can get there. Also, Twitch chat asks if the epic downfall is better. Well, of course. Wow, jaki skok. You seen this, bros? Epic Downfall is a different variant of this card. Like, it's probably better against mono green because it can exile Cavalier and Troll at the same time, but Anoint with a instant, so. Sad stuff, honestly. All that for what? Seriously, I don't know how many dollars this nets daily. Well, you would need to go to Modo. But I think if you do it quickly, it's kinda quick. No, yeah, I meant Epic Downfall Exiles Cavalier. And then if you have like Corrupted in your deck for some reason, then Anoint is actually okay. But you probably will not. Next. Black Sun's Twilight. XB. Almost like XD. Instant. One creature gets -X. If X is 5 or more, return a creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This card seems like a pretty big swing when it happens, although you have to treat it as a 6 mana spell, basically, as it seems very inefficient, very bad at less mana. If you cast it for 6 mana exactly, then you can kill a shoulder and bring back shoulder exactly, so you can do that, and that's pretty nice. So potentially I could see it in the sideboard spaces of decks like red black midrange, or maybe like if you have a mono black devotion deck in Pioneer that could also act as a mana sink for Nykthos. I think that's kind of viable. And then you can get back some of your creatures from your graveyard that died over the course of the game. It is your graveyard only, so you have to return something from your graveyard. So you have to have a creature end up there some way. And yeah, it could potentially be like okay in the Invoke Despair slots in the red-black midrange deck. But I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 because it seems pretty fringe and not very effective at that job. Probably can't play too many copies as the card is expensive. You really want to treat it as a 6 mana card. It's more of a standard card than a Pioneer card, yeah. Next we see Cacophony Scamp. For red mana, we get a Phyrexian Goblin Warrior. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it, and if you do, proliferate. And when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So, I was speaking about Hammer already with Skrelv and Kemba, and this is the last remaining piece for Hammer that I think is pretty exciting. And once again, talking about Pioneer mostly, but it is a warrior. I wonder how intentional that design decision was, because Resolute Strike is a shitty way to equip Colossus Hammer in Pioneer. And Cacophony Scamp actually enables relatively easy, doable kills on turn 2 in Pioneer. So, your opponent plays you play Cacophony Scamp, they play a Haunted Ridge, you play a Colossus Hammer in a Resolute Strike or Sigarda's Aid to equip that hammer, attack your opponent, and you just deal 22 damage to them. So, it seems pretty legit, seems pretty, pretty powerful, relatively powerful, like something that you could actually do that makes sense. With Kemba, we've got more resiliency for the hammer deck, so we could use Cacophony Scamp for the aggressiveness. We could use Kemba for the resiliency. Over the course of the longer games, you just try to equip your hammer with Kemba. You have the activated ability to do stuff. And we do have plenty of redundancy, let's say. Fireblight Charger was the one drop that you could use, which is similar. As long as it is equipped, it has haste, so I guess technically it has haste. And when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Unfortunately, Fireblight Charger does not have the ability to trigger its dice ability itself, sacrifice itself, but still provides you some redundancy. It's also a warrior, so like you have kind of similar effects, and if you hit your opponent once, then a removal spell on the charger is gonna kill them too. So it's pretty exciting, and I think I'm somewhat thrilled about the prospects of the Pioneer Hammer deck. Once again, I've said that before. I will be trying it out once it releases. Individually, it is hard to rate this card as better than 3 out of 5. We gave 4 out of 5 to Skrell, 3 to Kemba, but I think together it's also just a little bit tricky because the power of the Scamp, Kemba, Skrell, it all combines together into one pile of synergy that you gain access to, that you can do stuff with. So I'm going to give 3 to Cacophony Scamp, but it does make the list of my favorite cards from the set, in conjunction with Kemba and Skrell. Are there ways to tutor hammer on or other huge equips? Yes, you actually have up to 8 tutors that you can play in Pioneer. First of them is Open the Armory, with just 2 mana searches for an equipment, and then you have Fighter class, which also searches for an equipment. So you have many options. So yeah, Cacophony Scam definitely does make my list of my favorite cards from the set so far. Because of the hammer deck and because I am excited to try it. It's definitely giving me something to wait towards. Is Pioneer the next Pro Tour or something? Yes, it is. One draft. No, there's actually gonna be 2 drafts at the Pro Tour. It's always 2 drafts. Yes, I am qualified. One draft for most competitors? That is not true if you qualify with 4-4, unless you qualify with 5-3. You're waiting to say this one for how long? Spacebar question mark. Very good question. No, actually, I give it 4 out of 5. I give this card 4 out of 5 because I think... Oops, wrong button. I give it 4 out of 5. I think it's base, and I'm willing to make the bet that it's gonna make the hammer at least somewhat playable in Pioneer. It looks exciting. It looks exciting. Next. Capricious Hellraiser. 3 red. Phyrexian Dragon costs 3 less to cast if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. Flying, ETB, exile 3 cards at random from your graveyard, choose a non-creature non-land from among them and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. 4/4. First, we ask ourselves a question. How good it is if the card costs 3 mana? Let's just imagine that it always costs 3 mana, red. Well, it's pretty good because then you can just cast it when you have a small graveyard and like you just cast like a discard outlet and you discard an ultimatum and then you cast an ultimatum. So I guess then it's pretty good. So it's kinda, let's say, yeah, that is not a great analogy. So there's a few things to this card. It's a little bit confusing to describe it all at once. The natural tension that arises is the fact that this card costs 3 mana only if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. If we're thinking about modern, then this card absolutely needs to cost 3 mana to be a contender, I believe. And in modern, you could have 9 cards in your graveyard. It is doable. It's not always easy. It is definitely very hard if your opponent ever attempts to interact with your graveyard in any manner. So it seems hard to have a big graveyard at all times to have this enabled. And once you have it enabled, you get a free mana 4/4, which casts a random thing, and there's a decent chance you're gonna get some like a spell that's gonna be Mishra's Bubble. Because if you fill your graveyard to the level where you have 9 cards in your graveyard, it does feel like your graveyard most often is going to consist of fetch lands, Mishra's Bubbles, considers maybe Lightning Bolts. So there is like lots of... It seems really hard to consistently cast it for free mana in any reasonable capacity. And then once you do that, it seems hard to use the ability to cast something very meaningful. So let's think: is a red 4/4 recast a Mishra's Bubble a card I want to play in Modern? Let's just boil it down to that. Let's just have it be 3 mana red 4/4 Flying Dragon ETB draw card. Do you play that? What happens if you get 2 lands and a creature with this? Well, you choose a non-creature, non-land card from among those and copy it, so you don't choose anything. So I can't really imagine this be interesting in Modern. Let's say you... Well, you can't do that because Faithless Looting is banned, but if you could Faithless Looting and you discard Capricious, Hellraiser, and Imagine Ultimatum, and then you persist the Hellraiser, then you could guarantee that you get the Ultimatum. You have Looting, Ultimatum, persist in your graveyard. Yeah. If you put it like that, I would rather play Bedlam Reveler, yeah. That is true. Also, it removes cards from your graveyard, so your next copies will be worse. Why not just persist Archon for more consistency if you have Looting? Well, you probably will persist Archon, but I'm thinking about what you can do. You know, you could persist this card so you can cast the... non-creature from your graveyard. Alright, I have an idea, bros. What about this? What about this? Pow. What about this? Now, Dragonstorm is a 9 mana card. It is legal in Modern because of Time Spiral. But from amongst the dragons, I think Capricious Hellraiser seems like one of the better dragons to have in your Dragonstorm deck. Now, where to go with that is a little bit hard. I don't think you even have better, like, given the intersection of how playable this when drawn and how good it is at killing when you're killing your opponent, then I think Capricious Hellraiser works pretty well with Dragonstorm. You cannot Iron Crack the Dragonstorm, and I don't know how you otherwise get to Dragonstorm, yeah, so it's a little bit rough. How does Dragon work if you have less than 3 cards in grave? Well, you just exile however many you have. Spinerock Gnoll, yeah, simply deal 7 to your opponent. Magic's Mastery is not a modern legal card. Can reanimate Hellraiser and cast Dragonstorm that way. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Dragonstorm does not come back to your graveyard. Because Hellraiser exiles the card and then it copies it, but everything stays exiled. One interesting way to use it, I think in Modern it's just kind of dead to me. I don't see this card in Modern whatsoever. It's just so hard for me to imagine. I'm gonna wait for Aspiring Spike to prove me wrong. Capricious Hellraiser, Dig for Time. You can do a funky thing in Pioneer where you play the Hellraiser for 3 mana, and then in response to the ETB, you get to Dig for Time. And then you can curate your graveyard, only leaving the best non-creatures in there. So that way, you know, maybe some of your non-creatures are like Magma Opus. or something like that, and you get to cast a Magma Opus from your graveyard. You simply resolve a red UUU combination. The Fool. Omniscience will be better, I guess. Well, Omniscience does not naturally discard itself into your graveyard, so it has to get there, and Magma Opus actually gets there. I think it plays well with Shadow Prophecy kind of cards to an extent. It's potentially playable in a mono-red deck with DRC, Bubble, and Breach, because those 3 cards are very good and you want to make the deck worse, yeah. Alright, that Dig for Time, Magma Opus, that sounds kind of nonsensical. So what about the next thing that came to my mind? It's a dragon that seems relatively playable. So what if you... Well, but then you play Dig for Time in your Hellraiser deck, and that's a horrible anti-synergy because you are going to have 9 cards in your graveyard in your Delve deck. What if your opponent plays an Unlicensed Hearse and you just pay 6 mana for the Hellraiser always? I don't know. Maybe you can use it alongside Silumgar Scorn. Then Hellraiser plus Coldspell Dragon plus I don't know, just flashback something for value. As you see, we're trying really hard to think what to do with this, but I just don't see that. Well, you don't want to exile counters with a dragon, but you're gonna in Pioneer, if you cast it for 3 mana, you probably don't have too many lands in your graveyard, and unless you use like pieces of the puzzle. I mean, it's not like terrible. I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5. I just can't see this card realistically working. So we're gonna just leave it at that. It's like a fun card. Maybe some streamers will stream funny decks with it. I will not. Unless I'll find something interesting. It looks like a Saffron Live combo, yeah. Gleeful Demolition, red mana sorcery, destroy artifact. If you controlled it, create 3 Phyrexian goblins, creature tokens. So it is Kuldotha Rebirth, but it's better. Straight up better. Instead of sacrificing as an additional cost, you get to have the flexibility of that being a shutter. Notably an uncommon, so not a common, you cannot play it in you cannot play it in Popper, the format that is well known for being a Kulwafa Rebirth format, right? But I think the flexibility is nice, and I could see Gleeful Demolition as a sideboard option in, for example, Ragdo's Sacrifice, where you can have spare food tokens or blood tokens or something. If you think that 3 goblins is a reasonable fallback for your shatter, then I think you could play Gleeful Demolition. Maybe you can do some stuff in Modern with 8 Kuldotha Rebirths. Is it gonna materialize? No, but it does seem more real to me than Capricious Hellraiser, TBH. Like in the Monred Shrapnel Blast with the Synthesizer. If you play Darkseid Citadel, you can just pay red mana to make 3 goblins. That's not bad. Because you don't even sacrifice it, right? You don't have to destroy the artifact, you have to control it and target it. Well, they can interact with it with removal. Yeah, true. So, it seems kind of real in some ways. It's probably not going to be overly great. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. It looks both like a potential sideboard card and like a pretty fun build around that can get somewhere in some mono red decks, mono red artifacts variants. We've just had the mono red saga deck top 8. What, 1 challenge, 2 challenges, 2 copies top 8 at 1 challenge, I think. So it was real enough to at least be present. It was not really a Kuldotha Rebirth deck, but maybe it's if you have 8 of them, it could be repurposed to be one. Next card we see is Armored Scrap Goja. 20 challenge yesterday? Yesterday again? Damn. 1 green. As plus 3 plus 0 as long as it has 3 oil counters. 1 mana of any color. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. When tapped, exile target card from a graveyard and put an oil counter on the Scrap Gorger. Instant speed, graveyard hate on a mana dork. Kinda interesting. Being a potential free creature as a mana dork later in the game, also pretty interesting. Although I think that 2 mana dork is something that I might have a flawed perspective on. The stats are obviously reminiscent of Sylvan Caryatid, but I don't think Sylvan Caryatid would be close to playable to the level at which it is playable if it weren't for hexproof. It's literally just that. So Armored Scrapcore just has a different set of abilities. They're interesting abilities like instant speed, graveyard hate on a mana dark could get you places. There is Arclight Phoenixes, there is Storm the Festivals, there is like a swath of other options, but probably you don't actually want to be playing 2 mana dorks. And I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 for that reason. But it has pretty nice flexibility. There hasn't been any 5 out of 5 Woe Canisters cards. Canker Bloom. 2 mana, creature, Phyrexian, fungus. Free to 1 sack, choose 1, disenchant or proliferate. The value of proliferate is always pretty hard to describe, but it is a side grade to the Reclamation Sage family of effects, I guess more so. Caustic Caterpillar, Haywire Might, and Outland Liberator. Outland Liberator has tangible upsides for you to want to play it. As you do board in Liberator. I guess Hammer decks, and sometimes has good play patterns with Chord of Calling, where you Chord of Calling for it end of turn, and your opponent hasn't cast any spells because they intended to use Urza's Saga, and you get to flip it and destroy the Urza's Saga and still keep the werewolf, so that's pretty okay. So it really depends on your deck. If your deck values the 1 extra point of power and proliferate instead, then you're gonna play the Phyrexia Fungus. Let's give it 3 out of 5 because those, it's just like an honest removal spell. The stats are decent. If you want to play it, you will know. Nissa Ascended Anime. Free green. G. Legendary Planeswalker Nissa completed. So the completed mechanic, every time you pay life with the Phyrexian and green mana, it enters with 2 fewer loyalty counters. So we've got a 7 mana, 7 loyalty Planeswalker. Or 6 mana, 2 life, 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Or a 5 mana, 4 life. 5 mana, 4 life. 4 life is a lot if you think about it. Like, how many dismembers can you cast per game comfortably? Not too many, right? 5 mana, 4 life, 3 loyalty. +1, create an XX horror, where X is Nissa's loyalty. So it does plus to make humongous tokens. Even if the cheapest option, you +1 to make a 4/4, and then you +1 to make potentially bigger ones, which is kind of interesting and kind of powerful. On -1, we destroy artifacts and enchantments, so even if we start at 3 loyalty, we can do that twice in a row and then still keep Nissa. Is the size set? The size is set as it resolves. You plus Nissa. You put the loyalty counter on it as a cost. Ability is put on the stack, and then once the ability resolves, it makes a creature token of the size of Nissa. So if you play a 5 mana version of it, then you make a 4/4. And then we've got -7 until end of turn. Each creature control gains trample and +1/+1 for each forest you control. I'll come back in a minute and we're going to continue talking about Nissa. If you flicker it, we'll come back with 7, right? That is true. So Nissa is a bit interesting, although it comes with plenty of downsides. There's 3 different modes to evaluate. 7 mana mode. It's pretty interesting. You need to ramp pretty hard to be able to play 7 mana cards, so you're not always gonna get there. But it's a pretty powerful planeswalker. It pluses to make 8 8. Or it just overruns your entire board for a lot. For 6 mana and 2 life, you get a 5 loyalty, so you plus to make a 6/6. And then you still have to wait a little bit until the overrun. And then for 5 mana, 4 life, you get a solid planeswalker that pluses to make sizable tokens. So if unanswered, for example, against control, it does seem very threatening. Now, the way the mono green devotion decks are built in Pioneer right now, I think disqualifies this card from being very good. Not being a Storm the Festival hit is probably disqualifying in itself. And on top of that, a 4 life is a lot. I think if we ever, for some reason, want to play a not Storm the Festival, not Karn the Great Creator based version of Devotion, then I think I could very well look towards Nissa Ascended Animist. Then. And could use it as a top end and as a way to finish the game immediately if you are able to produce lots of mana with Nykthos and have a reasonable board state. But for now, I think it's very unlikely for me to actually see this card being played in any relevant strategies. It might be a standard card. It does seem like an okay standard card, maybe. Although paying 7 for life is just a lot. Does Phyrexia mana give devotion? Phyrexia mana indeed does give you devotion, so it is a card that gives 4 points of devotion. Although it is always gonna produce less mana than Nissa who shakes the world for the purposes. So I guess the competition is pretty stiff. They kill it in response to the +1. Is the token a 0/0? I think it's probably gonna use the last known information, so it's gonna be of this size. Like assuming they use a hero's downfall to kill Nissa, then it should use last known information. If they deal 8 damage to Nissa at instant speed, then I guess it's not gonna do that. I doubt that loyalty is checked on resolve. Well, I doubt that you know what you're talking about, because it is. With Unholy, he does a card. I don't know about this. Well, for Modern, it's pretty obviously not playable. I don't know, bro. Sinisa looks a bit exciting, but not like a card you actually will end up playing in anywhere. Can give her 1. We can just be ballsy and give her 1. I think she actually kind of sucks, and does this bit initiative? It cannot handle initiative. It's not really a garbage card. I think 2 is more fair, but I need to give 1 to some cards to give validity to my ratings, so that not everything is 2, so we're gonna give it 1. you know, kind of tampering with the system a little bit. Next card, Thrune, Breaker of Silence, 5 mana, can be countered, trample. It doesn't get anime boost. It's not really anime themed. It doesn't look anime at all. Not anime. Okay, Thrune, Breaker of Silence, 5 mana, can't be countered, trample, can't be target of non-green spells or abilities from non-green sources. And if it's your turn, Throne has Indestructible. Will there be an edited version of this on YouTube? That is my goal, yes. So, Thrune, Breaker of Silence. It doesn't die. It doesn't do much besides that. It does die to a few effects. It can die to edicts, which we've seen a few of, and it can die to sweepers. For example, Supreme Verdict just has no problem whatsoever dealing with it, right? It has Indestructible, but only on the turn of... only on your own turn, so I guess if your opponent Supreme Verdicts you, then you can do that. It will make green-white control unbeatable. Yeah. And many decks in Pioneer use sweepers, so it's a little bit awkward. You can use it in conjunction with Wrath. Damn, that's based. Actually, maybe that's one of the nicer uses. You play your Throne and then you cast your own Wraths. Can you suggest cards? Sure, suggest away. So I guess you want to be the one casting the Verdict with Throne. This is so stupid. I was thinking that you would use Throne in like sideboard of Gruul and you play it and you're like, haha, you can't kill my creature, and then you maybe, I don't know, Ember Cleave it or something. Which seems a little bit nonsensical, but maybe as a sideboard card it could be a little bit. Isn't there an alchemy green white draft? There is, yeah. Maybe that was foreshadowing. It can be killed with cards like Assassin's Trophy or Binding of the Old Gods. That is true. I guess it's pretty funny that you can use a black-green card to kill it, yeah, or a red-green card to deal damage to it. So actually some random effects targeted. And it doesn't do anything besides not dying, so I think it's a card that people will play in their sideboards, and I don't think they necessarily should, because those cards always read better than they do in practice. But there is a certain subset of a player who just, with an undying love to Furun the Last Troll, and who like... There was actually a player who was frequenting my LGS, who was one of the biggest ever fans of Thrune the Last Troll and was just playing Thrune in every single deck of his in Modern. So I think that him at least is gonna use Thrune Breaker of Silence and is gonna be happy to see it, I think. Just play Shaper's Sanctuary instead. I have a big beef with Shaper's Sanctuary. I think that card sucks, but I guess it does fit that people play it then. But I think Shaper's Sanctuary is giga bad. This card needs more canisters. Can give it 2.5. It's a high variance card. Yes, but like high variance, but it's shifted this way, and you're here, and the high variance is between this and this. That's my problem with it. That game versus Angels that had 2 Sanctuary was something. Yeah, they missed twice on their companies Go figure. Can deafening silence be an option versus cascade? Seems unrelated, but yes. Well, no, it doesn't stop Charles. It can't. Next we see Tyvar's Stand. Hexproof and indestructible and +X instant. Not a very remarkable card, not a very profound card, but what I think is very neat about it is that it's both a protection spell and an infinite mana sink. So it seems, in a way, convenient for Devoted Druid, which I think is funny and worth mentioning, right? Because you can use it both to like kill your opponent and you can protect your druid from removal. So I don't know, just works kind of neatly, I think. I'm not sure if it makes it playable enough, but the Devoted Druid decks kind of suck to begin with too, but it just fits very, very neatly. Is that completed T-Balt on the art? Yeah, it is actually completed T-Balt, but we didn't get a card of him. And I'm not sure if Tyvar is killing T-Balt right now, so T-Balt is just dying off screen. Could be. When they write songs about this battle, I will make sure your name is forgotten, devil. Yeah, his name will be forgotten, so I guess that's why we don't get the T-Balt card. That actually explains it clearly. In Elves, 1 mana protect, good mana sing later. I think just specifically with Devoted Druid. Let's give it 2 out of 5 or something, and I will just note the only notable interaction. Protection plus mana sink for Devoted Druid, infinite mana. Who is Tibalt? Who? Sorry, I don't know who you're speaking of. Rose Hoser, thank you very much for the sub, that is base. Now we see Venerated Rot Priest. Green mana, toxic 1. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter, 1/2. Now I am actually slightly confused. The target of a spell? Does that imply that it has to be a spell with a single target? Or not? If Electrolyze targets 2 Rot Priests. Does it imply that? Then why is D there? Isn't it typically whenever creature control becomes a target of a spell? D target of a spell? Maybe I just don't know English. Do you get extra triggers if you change target with Spellskite? Yes, changing targets does make the new target become a target, so it does trigger Venerated Rot Priest. Now, alright, to speak of Venerated Rot Priest, actually, I think as an infect card, it sucks. The toxic mechanic doesn't work well at all with pump spells, yet this card asks you to play pump spells. So it's a little bit weird, and there's some like tension, like you're trying to cast Giant Growth, Mutagenic Growth on this? No, because it doesn't make sense. You just give +1. But the damage is the same, and you still deal 1 toxic. So I guess it amplifies damage if you have a Glistener Elf or another toxic creature and Venerated Rot Priest alongside that, and then you're casting the spells on the Glistener Elf. But I'm not entirely sure if the Rot Priest contributes too much in that scenario. I'm not sure it contributes too much in that scenario. Because I think it's the Glistener Elf doing more of the work, and you probably would be better off playing different cards than the Rot Priest in that situation. Now, the thing that is actually, I think, exciting about the Rot Priest is the card that Twitchat brought 7 times so far. Understandably so. It is Ground Drift. Or any storm card that targets for what it's worth. So, Ground Drift, Grape Shot, everything works. You could Ground Drift your Rot Priest, and if you do it enough times, your opponent gains a poison counter for every time you have done that. And I actually had a deck idea yesterday. Like, it's pretty junky, and it is unfortunately free color, but between Venerated Rot Priest, Nymph Magus Elemental, and Clever Lumimancer, which unfortunately it's 3 creatures that are all different colors, so you have to play a Naya deck. But you have enough redundancy, feels like, where you have 12 1-drop creatures that actually work well with Ground Drift, so you might actually have a reason to play Ground Drift, right? So let's say you play Clever Lumimancer, Rot Priest, Nymph Magus Elemental. Then you go like 4 Ground Drift, 4 Manamorphose, 4 Mishra's Bubble, 4 Lava Dart, 4 Mutagenic Growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 playsets. And then can add, I guess, Underworld Breach. Doesn't seem too bad. Like 2 Grape Shot. And some extra effects on maybe some protection spells that, like Apostle's Blessing or or something of this kind to protect your cards. Mutagenic pretty nicely makes all of your creatures survive versus Bolt and turn 1 Unholy Heat, so it's pretty cool. Can play Sounders Pact? Oh, you can. That sounds very junky and very all-in. I think I'd prefer to play 12 different creatures that do stuff. So, you know, maybe it gets somewhere. I will try building a deck like this and see if it goes somewhere. The issue being that you have to splash for the Venerated Rot Priest. That's very not cool. That's very painful. And Pioneer, there's just no cards to toxic your opponent, right? Because there's just not enough toxic cards and not enough sources of infect, so it seems just straight up unplayable. How about Rot Priest and Scum? Doesn't seem so good. Yeah, it seems pretty bad. What if you just draw a 1-2 and Lava Darts? Or then you just Mishra's Bubble to Underworld Breach and do stuff. So yeah, I think you can do some funny bad stuff with Venerated Rot Priest. I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5 because I think some people will die to turn 1 Rot Priest, but it's gonna be very few people and very rarely they will. But for the funniness, like I think joy in life is very important, and some shitty cards bring you no joy, and this brings actually plenty of joy. Spellskite and this is 2 life for poison, or works just once. You need 2 Spellskites, so it's a bit tough. Did we discuss Green Sun's Twilight? That card is interesting to me. I did not put it on the list of interesting cards because it doesn't seem interesting to me. Green Sun's Twilight. Reveal top X, choose a creature card. Yeah, multiple Rot Priests actually stack. Multiple Lumimancers also stack. Rot Priest plus Lumimancer, not so much. If X is 5 or more, put the chosen cards onto the battlefield or into your hand. So you just put a creature from the top 5 into play for 6 mana, which is not that good. Leyline of Sanctity effects cancel Rot Priest. Damn, bro, that is terrible. It's and not or. Well, it's and or. I understand you get both, but that doesn't interest me. Or maybe you think it's Storm the Festival? Because you get Nyctos and Cavalier. The only creatures though, yeah, no Planeswalkers. Doesn't seem so good. Can you check Tyrannax Rex next? Tyrannax Rex. I don't think it fits into Amulet. Creatures can have multiple instances of Toxic 1, yes. That way they just deal Toxic 1 multiple times. So actually more toxic. 7 mana 8/8 can't be countered. Trample word for haste, Toxic 4. Okay. Why is it good? Duży zielony kaban, no tak wygląda. If it would be only 2 green, would be nice. I don't think that makes any difference. My kids would love it, yeah. Hard to get rid of. Yeah, but also got 7 mana. Neoform Hooting Madrich into this. We'll have a card to Neoform into really soon. Tyrannax, I don't know, seems greatly uninspiring to me. And no reason to spend time on this. If you get hit 3 times, you die to Infect, true. Well, even if you trample a bit, you Toxic 4, that's pretty nice. Soulless Yailer. 2 mana. Phyrexia and Golem. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast noxious spells from graveyards or exile. The perfect fall to Living End. It's pretty funny because it actually doesn't work. For multiple reasons. No, actually it does work. They can't cascade into Living End. So it is a cascade hate card because they can't cascade, right? The first line doesn't work because it would die. And then it wouldn't work anyways, even if it wouldn't die to the living end. But yeah, it is a Cascade Hate Bear that's both a creature, an offer wall, and a colorless card, so you can fit it into any deck virtually. Permanent cards and graveyards can enter the battlefield. It does not stop creativity, right? I don't see a reason why it would. It does not stop company. So, off the top of my head, if it's just Cascade that it gets stopped by. The cage hands that this golem is wielding don't seem all that useful. It does stop breach, yeah. Can't cast non-creature spells. You can cast creature spells from your graveyard or exile. Wait, non-creature spells? Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, but they can enter the stack. Bros, they like... The way they phrase those cards... It always feels like it's a puzzle. They phrase it as a riddle. What does it actually do? Right? Like what was our idea when we designed this? Like what did we want to hate on? Because it's you spend lots of time trying to untangle that. As is, it seems like a side grade to like headbest. I can give it free because like it's a card you will play in a sideboard sometimes, not super often. It's gonna have some minor upside, minor downsides. Like for example, if you compare it to Tranif Magistrate, right? That's a card that's playable and it just does virtually the same thing for the most part. In practice, so it's kind of like similar slot, but instead of being a white creature, it's an artifact, so you can do stuff. Magistrate does not stop reanimation, hence why I said that it virtually stops the same things. And not that it actually stops exactly literally the same things, but virtually for all most intents and purposes for modern, it's a card that you can board Hatebear versus Cascade. Sword of Forge and Frontier. 3 mana, +2/+2, protection from red and green, equip 2. When deals combat damage, exile the top 2 cards. You may play those cards. You may play an extra land this turn. First, I think the artwork on this card is goofy as hell, and it looks very unthreatening. It looks like it's either from rubber or from plastic. So on top of that, it looks pretty stubby, very short, weirdly wide. So it's not doesn't seem very useful for stabbing. So it looks very goofy and just kind of ruins my immersion. If this is what the Mirrodins use to fight, then I'm not surprised they lost. As far as the effect goes, it's fine. Like, to this day, some people sometimes play swords of various effects in their Sunforge Mystic decks, and I think whichever you want exactly depends a lot on the exact removal that is being present and the exact situations where you want to do that. Seems like pretty similar value on hit to Sword of Fire and Ice, for example. So protection from green is not useless because It can let you attack for Primeval Titans, for example, which is actually a card that you would want to get unblocked through sometimes. For the most part, I think it's very, very whatever, and the concept of the swords has not aged extremely well, so I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 and move on. It is also true that red and green is the best at killing artifacts, so they shouldn't have a huge problem dealing with this if they're playing a red-green deck. Oftentimes, it's a bit of an awkward pair of synergies. Next card. Zenith Chronicler. 2 mana free one. Now this is a weird card. I'm not sure if it's supposed to hate on anything specific, but it does hate on people who play lots of multicolored spells pretty effectively. Which that tells me is it's a commander plant, which maybe, but I don't know. If Mizet would exist in modern, I guess not in modern, in Pioneer, then I could imagine this card. In kinda okay versus it's probably not still. In modern it's not playable for many reasons. Mainly because the only good cards in modern are 1 mana and this is like 2 mana, and also 1 mana cards by the nature of things cannot be multicolored, so I guess the Zenith Chronicler doesn't matter at all. I thought it's interesting, but I guess it sucks. It's gonna be pretty hard for anyone to lose to this card. They can. Well, I understand that they can, the hybrid cards exist, but for the most part, they don't. Did I review Argentum Masticore? No. Fast strike protection from multicolored, 5 mana, 5/5. This does not seem playable. That's my review. Now let's talk about this card, which I find a little bit exciting. Atraxa Grand Unifier, 7 mana, not red. Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. ETB, reveal top 10. For each card type, you may put a card from the revealed cards. Pierdolę się to czyta tak tragicznie. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So what it equates to, you draw 3, 4, maybe 5 cards, depending on how your deck is built or what exactly happens. Also, we got a little bit of a spoiler here. Artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, and sorcery are card types. Listing battle. If we search for battle in Scryfall, we're going to find no results. So at the same time, we've got that hint from Mark Rosewater on his Tumblr a few months ago that March of Machines is going to change Magic dramatically, and probably that's what he meant by introducing, that's probably what he meant. Like, this card seems to do the Tarmogoyf thing of spoiling the newly coming card types in the reminder text of a card from a previous set. I'm guessing. So we're going to see what the battles are gonna be, what are they gonna be about. We'll see. Hard to say. For now, it's all speculation. For now, let's focus on what the card does for us now. I think it's actually pretty interesting because it is a big lifelinker, lifelink vigilance, flying, so a good set of abilities. Death touch pretty irrelevant on a 7/7, but vigilance, lifelink, flying just means that you can always, if you attack with it, you're gonna stabilize because you can block on the attack. Notably an angel because of power word kill. It's protected from that. What I think is interesting with this card is Neoform in Pioneer, which might sound a little bit stupid, but it's something you could do with the Delph creatures. There was the Velomachus Lorehold deck. Alright, I'll go grab some water and then we're gonna talk about Draxa. I'll be back in a minute. Rumor has it Cancer is still coughing. Not true. So, where did we leave at? Atraxa. It's a good body, good life-linking body that stabilizes you. That also draws you plenty of cards. Reveal 10, draw cards of any types. Like, every card has a type. It's kind of like Niv Mizzet, right? Niv Mizzet Reborn, which flipped 10 cards. It frequently drew like 2 only. Sometimes it drew 5. Kind of inconsistent in that. But that's because cards can either be colorless, cards can either be multicolored or not. In Atraxa's case, every single card will have a type. So you will always draw cards with Atraxa, and I believe that depending how you build your deck, on average you're going to be drawing more. I think being able to tutor it with Enigmatic Incarnation is pretty good, yeah. I would not be surprised if that deck turns to Atraxa as its 7-drop of choice to find with Enigmatic Incarnation Leyline Binding combo. As Atraxa is a big stabilizer and a big card advantage, good against control, combo, and aggro alike. What about Tribal? Tribal is a card type. The list of the card types listed. Kulek. The list of the card types listed on Atraxa is not exhaustive and is not all card types that are present in the game. It is instead a reminder text which sometimes does not align with the true meaning of the rules. So I think Atraxa is a card you could try to cheat into play, be it with Enigmatic Incarnation, Neoform, Glorious Vengeance, I don't know, Show and Tell, probably not. Reanimate, probably not, but you know. As far as reanimation targets, cheat into play targets go, I think you can do worse than Atraxa. Like, you do kind of get a... Like, it's no Grizzlebrand, but at the same time, you kind of get a Grizzlebrand activation out of it, out of this ETB effect that does not cost you life. So I think there is plenty of upside here. And on top of that, it's also a 7 mana 4-color card, which means that it pitches to all of the effects, be it Solitude, Endurance, Grief, Force of Will, whatever you want to play. So yeah, it's probably the best pair to cheat in Pioneer currently, and it's probably somewhat of an option in older formats, although much closer in there. So I'll give Atraxa 4 out of 5 because I think it's actually very strong. Would be great in Modern. Well, it's gonna be legal in Modern, so you can play it. Also can't be killed by a power word kill, which is pretty funny. Ty kurwa, zaraz się zbanuję. Będziesz polecisz. Oj. Yeah, it's pretty harsh, I don't know. Didn't deserve a timeout, so I'll unban Zerg 4. Just wanted to. Abuse power a bit. You know, if you would miss on a creature. Yes, but you would hit on other types, like, doesn't really matter. So Atraxa 4 out of 5 walk canisters. And now we go with Glissa Sunslayer. We can hide this Grizzlebrand, no longer useful. 1 black green, Phyrexia and Zombie Elf, first strike Death Touch, so virtually unblockable. Well, it is blockable, but it's only chompable. Unless your opponent has 4 creatures that are bigger than Glissa and are ready to pile them up to block Glissa, so unlikely. When it deals combat damage to a player, choose one. You draw a card and you lose one, you destroy enchantment, or you remove 3 counters from target permanent. So, it's kinda nice that it cannot be interacted with in combat meaningfully, and it does impact the board in the sense that you can block anything freely for a turn when it is on the battlefield. Then you like attack and you probably just draw cards. The other effects seem kind of random. Destroy enchantments, kind of narrow, or remove 3 counters from target permanent. It's valid, but I'm not sure how you're gonna be using that meaningfully. For modern, there is absolutely zero chance you want to be using that. You cannot be using that. So I think the consideration here is Pioneer. In Pioneer, I think a card like this could be close to being decent, but even nowadays, it is pretty tough sell for people to play creatures that cost 3 mana and they don't impact the battlefield whatsoever if they just trade with a removal spell quickly, right? So that's a little bit awkward and you don't play cards like this often, but you could consider that. Seems like a decent card for Pioneer Elves. It does seem a little bit disjointed with what Pioneer Elves as a deck does for the most part, but it is a relatively high impact singular creature. But that means you could maybe sideboard this and that would be okay. Because it would give you a creature that's very good to curve your elf into, and it would give you a creature that is very singularly effective without needing for tribal synergies. So, yeah, it might be more of a John slash black green midrange card. Yeah, if you play like a John and Pioneer, there's other free drops that probably just almost always gonna take precedence over it because of the flexibility or the value they can provide instead of just trading 1 for a fail push. So, for example, like even Graveyard Trespasser is a card that people play nowadays that does do a thing if your opponent interacts with it, so it does not just cleanly die to removal spells. This card is going to be great for zombies. It is also a zombie, yes. I guess maybe it's also gonna be good for Phyrexians. But yeah, I think it's like relatively strong, but you just cards like this just have like very high, very low, very high bar to clear, very low chance to actually get there. So I'll give it 2 out of 5, and I'll move to the next card in a minute. You can't wait to try it in your deck of cards. I would bet you will never play this card, Vitek. Not a single time. Well, maybe on the pre-release. What about Miran's Safe House? Lotus Field, Nyctos, Dark Depths, etc. I haven't read it, so we have to reread it. 3 mana. It has all activated abilities of all land cards in all graveyards. Well, it's a 3 mana mana rock. So like the joke is that it has Dark Depths activated abilities, but having the activated abilities of Dark Depths is not very relevant. Because I think you're more so after the triggered ability. You can crack it like a fetch land. That's funny. Just play the Miran Safe House and like sacrifice it immediately. Not so safe after all. Goes infinite with Mutavolt and Griffin Canyon. I've seen that. That was the first time I've seen Griffin Canyon. Untap target Griffin. That Griffin gets +1/+1 till end of turn. I mean, so if you discard Lotus Field, then it has Lotus Field abilities, so I guess. Seems trash. Which is why I didn't put it in the review. Melira, the Living Cure. Watchwolf. Poison. You get less poison. Doesn't matter. Exile Melira, the Living Cure. Choose another target creature or artifact. Then when it's put into a graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it is an exile ability. What I think this card is important at is that it's a Mox Amber card, which I did talk badly of Mox Amber previously. Deservedly so for the Mox Amber. But true avid fans of the stream might remember the Joda, the Unifier Humans deck that I played once. I think Melira seems like it would fit straight into that and would improve the carry of that deck a little bit. Has good stats. It's like 2 mana 3/3. You know. The ability is relevant. It's not like super much, but it's it's a pretty minor card for a minor archetype. Besides that, 2 mana 3/3, just kind of like strong stats in general, but I think it does not impress many people much nowadays, so it's mostly for that Joda, the Unifier option. Maybe some other minor scenarios where you'd be interested in using this card. Miglos, Maze Crusher. Oh, a 3 mana Phyrexian Beast. Enters with 5 oil counters, and then it's a 4/4. You can remove 1 oil counter to give it Vigilance Menace. You can remove 2, well, pay 1, remove 1 oil counter. Then you can pay 2, remove 2 oil counters to give it +2/+2. And then 3, remove 3 to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Miglos does appear to me like a card that I could potentially see in a Gruul Idiots deck. It is decently started with decent upside. So it is a card I might want to play on turn 2 off of my Llanowar Elves if I want to put pressure on my opponent. Nice Bard class art. Yeah, it is also a Bard class card, so I guess the Bard class Mox Amber that all applies. again, and it's gonna apply over and over. So the problem with Bard class is mostly the fact that sometimes you don't draw Bard class, or sometimes they interact with Bard class. So I think that's more of a bottleneck than the amount of legendaries in Gruul, but of course it does not make it worse. Doesn't Melira give infinite counters using Arcbound Ravager? Melira excels itself, so you can't really go infinite with that. Yeah, the activated ability to destroy artifact or enchantment is 3 oils and 3 mana, so it's very expensive. But the 2 mana ability can threaten some good attacks. So opponent won't be able to block easily. Giving men is also not too bad, so I think Miglo is good idiot for the idiot deck. I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 because it's not overly exciting and not particularly good, and might see some play or might not see some play, but it's also my least favorite type of a card. Because it is like a Yorvo, right? Chat, it's Miglos a Yorvo. Melera says until end of turn return to the battlefield so you can keep sacking Ravager. The new Ravager is a new object. It does not work like that. Not Yorvo. I think Miglos is not quite Yorvo. It's like a bit too complicated with the oil counters and the trickery. But it's Yorvo reminiscent of Yorvo. Nahiri, the Unforgiving. 4 mana, completed. 5 loyalty. You +1 and 1 target creature attacks a player each command available, so you can protect itself. +1 discard a card and draw. 0 exile a card from your graveyard, creature equipment, and make a copy of it. It has to have mana value lesser than Nahiri's loyalty. So what do you think of Nahiri? Because I honestly am not sure. I look at it and it's kind of confusing as to what this card is trying to do. How does it protect itself? If you +1 on a creature, it cannot attack Nahiri because it has to attack a player. Is there an infinite loop with Melira and Safi Eriksdotter? Once again, Melira exiles itself, so it does not work. I think it will see play in Modern Hammer. 1, 2 off. Interesting. So it is a 3 mana card. Then she starts with 2 free loyalty, so she can haste 2 drops from the graveyard. Then 2 Harvester, turn 3, kill 2 creatures. Yeah, there is some options for Nahiri. I mean, you don't often have a hammer in your graveyard, so like you just get the creature for a turn. So what? Flashback a Stoneforge Mystic. So you have Nahiri flashing back Nahiri. It's just interesting in various Greasefang decks. It does look pretty good for Mardu Greasefang, yeah, something like that. Discard draw, then return Greasefang. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, you cannot reanimate 5 drops. It has to be lesser than Nahiri. So if you play her for 3 mana, it's a 2 drop. If you play her for 4 mana, it's a 4 drop. Can get back Fury or Solitude. Yeah, I think for Modern this seems clearly too weak. In Pioneer it does create some value with ETB effect monsters or with Greasefang. So I can think of possible homes where I would want to try this card. Well, also maybe the Modern Hammer, but that sounds a bit sketchy to me. Hammer is also not necessarily a deck that's great at protecting planeswalkers. You also have to have things in your graveyard. Well, I'll give it 3 out of 5. For like the Pioneer, Greasefank's home. The Greasefank seems pretty good use. And I think Mardu Greasefank would be actually a deck that's playable, because Absent Greasefank is unplayable to me because it's way too inconsistent, and the fail rate is casting cantrips that just fumble around and don't achieve anything. And Satyr Wayfinders, 1/1s, while Mardu Greasefank would have backup plans of Nahiri, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and Blood Type Harvester. So the card quality on your deck is much, much higher, and you can actually do impressive stuff when your game plan gets stopped. Next we see Tivar. Joe Byland. Can't quite read it because Tivar is covering the name. What's the name, chat? Blur. Bowler, I guess. But the backup plan doesn't beat a lot, and with only 4 Parhelions as only payoffs, it's more inconsistent. You can use Sky Sovereign in your deck. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Greasefang. Kinda evergreen. 3 mana, 3 loyalty. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. +1 to untap, -2 to mill free, return a creature with mana value 2 or less from a graveyard to the battlefield. Once again, Devoted Druid comes to mind. Second Tyvar card, the first Tyvar card also made us think of Devoted Druid. But Tyvar essentially gives haste to all of your mana dorks. And that seems to be the main draw to the card, I think. That seems like the most powerful piece of the card. Being able to activate abilities of creatures you control as those creatures had haste. Being able to -2 to get a creature with potentially an activate ability into play immediately sounds pretty convenient too. So I think all the activate abilities that require tapping but are not gated by mana costs are really interesting. You mentioned Vanifar in the chat. Vanifar has a strong ability that is not gated by cost. So definitely that is very exciting and something you might want to be playing. Priest of the Forgotten Gods, really good activate ability that you're really happy to have access to immediately. Very powerful effect, creates more mana, which you can spend on more stuff that you can activate immediately if it has activate abilities too. You like this a lot of Fauna Shaman. That sounds odd to me because Fauna Shaman is not good at all. But there's some nice upsides, like just think of the curves that Tyvar can do, right? You could do stuff like turn 1 Llanowar Elf, then turn 2 Tyvar, untap your Llanowar Elf, and you can just play all the Llanowar Elves you have in your hand. Every single one of them. Priest of Fell Rights in Modern. Yeah, that's a strong ability too. Dryad Abba is now a Mox. Well, it takes your land drop, so Dryad Abba is now a land. All Tyvar Planeswalker is unplayable. Maybe you're wrong. Yeah, Tyvar, you can minus Tyvar, get the priest, activate priest immediately. 6 staff. What else there is? There is, for example, Elvish Archdruid. That's a strong ability that you'd want to have access to immediately. Whoa, I don't know this Elvish Archdruid. This one. Which it just taps for plenty of mana immediately. In Pioneer, you cannot play with Elvish Archdruid. You can play with the more copium version, Circle of Dreams Druid. Which I'm not sure if it's good at all, but it is something you can do. Griselbrand can activate immediately. That's true. I'm pretty sure there's some nice stuff that you can do with Tyvar, so I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 wall canisters for looking pretty based, and it's a pretty cheap card that seems like it can enable your combos in some way. So, and it also just kind of does stuff immediately. You get back, like, it kind of works coherently, where both of the abilities work kind of well with the other abilities you have. Card is kind of cool with Catilda. Dawnheart Prime, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Highest graded card so far. Just wait till the end of the review. I like Tyvar. I'm not sure how I will use it, but I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5. And then that means we are done with the section of the review that discussed multicolored cards, and we move on to lands. And here we come with the Mycosynth Gardens. Tap, add colorless land sphere. 1 tap, add 1 mana of any color. And X tap, it becomes a copy of a target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. So most of you probably know already what we have with in mind with regards to this card, and that is Amulet of Vigor. There's been some chatter about that, and it does seem like a pretty powerful combination. With Modern Horizons 2, Urza's Saga made it so that Amulet became much more consistent at getting access to the first Amulet, which is convenient for them because it does make it easier to combo. But it is also true that it is much more easy to combo with 2 amulets than it is to combo with 1 amulet. The deck really operates okay with 1 amulet, pretty strong, but it really pops off with 2. And with 2 amulets, you just almost always win the game, the turn you drop a Titan and you perform some game actions. Mycosynth Gardens, of course, being a colorless land is not that great to include in the mana base, so some sacrifices will have to be made color-wise. You will have to struggle maybe a little bit to put it in, but there are probably some ways to do that. And it actually is not a fully colorless land. If your hand is like Gardens, Urza's Saga, you can play an Arboreal Grazer on turn 2 in a hand that looks like this. So that's actually a pretty nice upside. That ability is kind of thrown on top of everything else, because this land might as well have been just fully colorless. So lines like turn 1 Mycosynth Gardens Amulet, turn 2 Copy Amulet, turn 3 pop off with 2 amulets, seem pretty real. It does seem like it would increase the amount of turn 3 kills significantly. It seems pretty hard to convert into a turn 2 kill. But any hand with Gardens and Amulet is gonna have 2 amulets by turn 3. And any hand with Gardens and Urza's Saga is also going to have double amulet by turn 3. So it does seem like you can try to build the amulet deck in a way where it pops off on turn 3 pretty easily. Any Explore, Grazer, or Azusa at that point will, plus a bounce land of course, will enable you to produce 6 mana to play Titan and then attack them. The Gardens, but not legendary. They shy away from printing legendary lands for a while because they play badly. The World Tree was also just a normal land you could have played many copies of. Turn to double amulet, bounce land into Grazer. Well, to turn 2 kill with the Gardens, you need to go Gardens Amulet, then you need to play bounce lands, float to return the bounce land, copy the amulet. With 1 green floating, play Grazer. Make 4 mana. With that 4 mana, play another Grazer, an Explore, or an Azusa. In that way, you gain enough mana to play Titan. Yeah, notably, Mycosynth Gardens becomes an artifact forever. It stops being a land. It is no longer a land, it just becomes a copy of that artifact forever. So this card does not enable turn 2 kills, as I just explained. It does enable turn 3 kills very consistently though. Unless it's an artifact land. Oh, actually, yeah, very technically correct. So I think it's a nice boost of consistency for Amulet. And I think for Modern, it's probably gonna be the most relevant card from the set. For now. From what it seems like. And it actually seems pretty exciting. I like the Amulet deck. I definitely will retry it with the new card. And we're gonna see what it's gonna do there. Now, Amulet is not even necessarily the only home where you're gonna be able to play it. As the Twitch chatter mentions, Phyrexia Dreadnought is something you can copy. It's not very relevant to me because as the title of this stream suggests, it's a set review for Modern and Pioneer, and Phyrexia Dreadnought is not legal in that format. How many would I put in a deck? I would start with 4 Mycosynth Gardens. I will need to lay out the deck list and see exactly how I want to go about it, but I would just start by trying to play 4 Mycosynth Gardens in Amulet. And then maybe I will adjust later. Now, again, the important thing is that it's also a pretty decent mana sink land. It's not even a fully colorless land for like any random deck that wants, maybe doesn't want colorless lands, but can sometimes overpay for a spell to fix a little bit. Let's say you're playing like a Prison Throne variant, or what other decks are artifact based. Anything that comes to mind, you can like copy artifact pieces with this, like a Standing Brigade to be more protected in the late game. You could maybe copy a Hammer, which does not seem to accomplish much. There's not too many decks where it seems excellent. Lantern Control, Hardened Scales. Damn, Lantern Control, that's just a way to get more Codex Shredders into play, or to be protected more, like with your Standing Brigade. Seems kind of legit. I like it, bros. I think it's worth trying in Lantern, etc. Can copy Esper Sentinel, yeah, and the ability is pretty cheap. It's like you don't overpay that much for it. So I think we are going to mainly see it in Amulet as a way to greatly boost the consistency of the deck. Other than that, it is going to show up in some minor amounts in some other decks, maybe as expedition, map, targets, etc., where it's a mana sink option in the late game. I'll give it 5 woke canisters because I think it should impact Amulet pretty decently. It seems actually pretty strong, and I have high hopes for it. So it also does seem like the best, most relevant card in the set for Modern Pioneer. As of right now, of course, there is a chance I'm wrong and I have missed some cards greatly, or I misjudged many cards greatly. Yeah, I guess I don't see it playing Pioneer, but for Modern I give it 5. And that is all in that case. Those are all the cards that I have rated from this set today. So I gave 4 woke canisters to the Mykosinth Garden. 4 woke Kanekis for Tivar Jubilant Brawler for enabling the combos. And 4 woke canisters to Skrelv and Cacophony Scamp, which kind of go as a combination. Kemba, Skrelv, and Cacophony Scamp go as a package for the Pioneer Hammer deck together. And on top of that, Atraxa as a powerful target for cheating into play for now and for the future. So those are my favorite cards from this set. I'm excited to play with them once Phyrexia All Will Be One drops in Magic Online, and I can get my hands on them. What else? Oh, I know what else. If you watch this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. And watch more of my content. I stream daily, almost daily on twitch.tv/canister_mtg, so be sure to visit that if you would like to catch some of my live content. Twitch chat also asked how I consider dark mode in Google Sheets. Actually, never thought. Icarmoon Gauntlet. Is that the Tamio? I mean, this is not good, right? What do I do if I'm watching on Twitch? Then your immersion is broken a little bit. And that's it. What rating did he give to Skrelv? I gave it 4 woke Kanekis. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Can I see the new Nahiri also being a 1-2 off in Pioneer Hammer? I don't know if she offers much to Pioneer Hammer. I think I would actually want to use a different Nahiri in the Pioneer Hammer in the sideboard. The one that makes cores and equips the hammers that are just laying there to the cores. When I played one league with Hammer, I actually played that card. It seemed decent against control once when I just had it and it resolved. it's gonna be it for today. I will come back tomorrow with some gameplay. I wish I could play with the new cards already, but we have to wait for a week more. Which is kinda lame. Stay hydrated and see you some other day.